Welcome to Guardians of Innovation, Patent and Trademark Law.
Hello and welcome to Guardians of Innovation, Patent and Trademark Law, the podcast where we dive into the world of intellectual property and protect the ideas that shape our future. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and as always, we are joined by the expert himself, registered patent attorney, Vincent LoTempio. Vincent, so good to see you.
Hey, great to see you too today.
So today we're going to tackle a crucial question for any entrepreneur, business owner, or creator: how you choose the right trademark for your brand. And with so many factors to consider, it can be quite the daunting task. So can you start by explaining what the trademark does specifically for a brand's protection?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, why do I need this? Why do I have to go and file my mark? Like you said, it protects you, right? It differentiates you from your competition, and it stops the competition from being able to copy and use your goodwill and your trademark and everything that you built up. It's your ability to protect your brand, right? It gives you an exclusive right in the marketplace. And if it's registered, there's a presumption of ownership. Now, that presumption doesn't mean that it's over, you have it, nobody can contest it. But the presumption has to be overcome in the courts. And what does it come down to? Who used it first? So, what are some things that you need to do is to document how you used it. And when I say document it, is to keep records of how many dollars you spent in advertisement, how many people came to your webpage, how many people drive by every day and see the billboards. Those type of things, you should keep track of. I always say you have to be like Hansel and Gretel, leaving breadcrumbs behind. So when the time comes to protect it and to sue somebody, you have the case all lined up, ready to start that lawsuit.
Absolutely. It's good to be prepared. And what role does the market and industry play in selecting a strong trademark for your business?
Well, we talked about this in the previous podcast, is that you want something that's relevant to your type of industry, right? And you want to be able to attract a certain type of demographic. And of course, you want to know in your industry what everybody else is using. So look, you're not stepping on their toes and they're not stepping on our toes. When I get a cease and desist letter from an attorney for one of my clients, in my template email, it starts off with, look, I do not counsel my clients to infringe on anybody else's trademarks. We respect other people's trademarks and we hope that you respect ours. So it's important to understand what's out there, what people are using, and to make yourself distinguishable from everybody else. And that's the bottom line. What a trademark and brand is all about, is to distinguish you from everybody else.
We've talked about this in previous episodes, but just in case this is someone's first visit with us, can you talk about the process for conducting a trademark search and how it might affect your decision in choosing a mark?
Yeah, again, we start with just to see, I call it the knockout search, just to see if it's there. You
Right.
do a search on the internet and you make a determination, is anybody using it? Then, you can search directly on the USPTO website, uspatenttrademarkoffice.gov.gov, and just make a determination, is somebody already registered it, right? Do we want to spend all kinds of money on something that somebody already has registered it?
Right.
So, and that's the same thing. I mean, once yours is registered, if somebody else does this search and they see your trademark is registered, you think that, and I always ask the question to the client, if we saw this right now, would you go forward? No, you wouldn't, right? So getting it registered it's like a constructive notice to everybody in the country that this is your trademark. Nobody can say that they didn't know you had it if you registered it, and certainly once you send that cease and desist letter out, that's an actual notice. You're telling them, this is my trademark, stop using it.
It can be difficult to select a trademark that is both legally defensible and effective in the marketplace. You sort of coach your clients to balance those two.
Yeah, the thing with Google, and that's their trademark, right? And you can argue that Google is generic, genericized now, because so many people just say, I'll Google it. But we start with the patent search, or the trademark search, and just see if it's out there, and just to understand whether or not it's out there. And then, just because a trademark, you type it in and it comes back that it's not there, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's available, because The rule isn't that it's identically the same, but that it's confusingly similar. So if somebody just changes it a little bit or phonetically equivalent, and it confuses the consumer, then it's not going to be a good trademark.
Yeah, and I think too we've talked about where you try, as a business, an entrepreneur, whatever, you're trying to balance creativity and distinctiveness. Of course, we talked about the legal aspect of things. When it comes to the distinctiveness and the creativity, what do you hope that your clients will figure out there?
Yeah, everybody wants to do what it is that people are going to type. They're selling cameras. I want cameras, right?
Hmm.
So that's the problem. You got to balance between you know, highly descriptive and generic versus creative, like suggestive, arbitrary, or fanciful. And I always try to see if you can come up with this idea of a fanciful mark and to create that one that's distinctive, but it's not descriptive, and try to get away from the descriptors. You can't believe how many people just come with descriptive marks. They talk about the soft shaver or something. It's just look at the difference between Gillette or Bic. That those when you hear that name, although you'll think of razors when I say it because they've acquired distinctiveness over time. But the first time Gillette came out with a razor, nobody knew it was a razor until they built that brand recognition.
And that's got to be tough for people who go with the fanciful marks early on. I mean, even though that's great for distinctiveness, we live in a world where we think about search engine optimization and what people are going to type and what they're putting into ChatGPT now. And if you have some crazy name, it takes some time to build that into something that's recognizable.
Yeah, and I think that's true, and that's why people are thinking in those terms. But you know what? I just got an email from somebody, they want to sell me patentlawyer.com, something like that. And I went back to my IT guy and says, they're not as important as it once was to have that domain name that is very descriptive. At the end of the day, I tell clients, look, this descriptive name that you want to call it, you can still use it because you're just describing what your product is. And so if you
Right.
want that in your meta tags and in your description, use it. But at the same time, start building this brand recognition of this unique, fanciful mark and slowly build it. And once it is built, it's just such a strong mark that nobody's even close to it. So many times I do a search and there's hundreds of the same name, whatever the name is. Let's just say it's Magnificent, right? And there's 1,000 Magnificents out there, but it's Joe's Magnificent, selfie stick. Here's a selfie stick, you know, and your Tom's Magnificent, whatever. So I say those are diluted marks because so many people are using it. And dilution, just like you put water in Clorox and you dilute a solution, you're starting off with a weak solution, a weaker solution than a stronger solution. So as soon as you see that whatever that descriptive mark is being used by so many different people, it's a weak mark. It's not virgin territory. And what you want to be in is virgin territory where you're the only one has this. So once you do build that recognition, it's so much stronger. And like you said, anything worthwhile, it's a lot of heavy work and heavy lifting. And people want to take shortcuts. But my Aunt Dolores used to say, you can pay now or pay later. And down the road, when you want to protect this trademark and everybody says it's just a descriptor and everybody else is using it, and you can't protect it, well, what good is it? You got it registered if it in the long run isn't a valuable trademark.
And we talked in our pre-show chat about influencer marketing. I see you got a selfie stick, so you're ready to start your influencer career. I can tell.
Yeah, well, I actually worked on the patent for the original guy on the selfie stick, and I was on a show called The $1 Million Genius on the History Show, where they went through all these guys that came up with ideas, and I came up. I got to go on the show with Wayne Fromm, who invented the selfie stick. So
Oh,
I
no
just
kidding.
I just keep one here sitting on my desk all the time because I was lucky enough to do that. I remember even myself, going on the History Channel, being on a national television show and sitting there with my wife watching it when it first went live and looking at her and saying, how the hell did I get on here? And it's the same type of thing with inventors. When somebody does hit it big like Wayne Fromm, I'm so happy for him. And I always can say, and I actually said it in the show, look, it's not going to happen for everybody, but it could happen to you, and it's not going to be easy. And people will look and say, oh, he sold $2 million worth of selfie sticks in 1 month on QVC in 19 or 2005 or whatever year it was, and everyone says, look how easy it was. But no, it wasn't easy. I mean, he had to go through all those trials and tribulations to get to that point. And it's hard work and elbow grease. And there's no getting around the hard work and elbow grease. So I know people want that easy trademark and that easy one, and I could just type it in and all of a sudden it'll just start popping up. But like I said before, you put up good content and you work hard, and then people will find you.
Do you think, like, kind of piggybacking off what we were talking about before, and that are people just putting too much emphasis on SEO? Are we kind of still trained to think, oh, well, it's all about the SEO, it's all about the SEO, so they're trying to sort of parlay
Yeah,
that
I think
momentum
people are
into their name?
brainwashed, and I don't think anybody's ever really known. People claim to be experts. I get phone calls every day. I'll get you number one on Google, and I ask them, well, what are you? What am I now? I mean, what am I selling? They don't even know. They're reading off a script.
Right.
And I always say, good content, working hard, and elbow grease. Hard work and elbow grease is what's going to get you there. And I remember starting with my first web page. I think it was 99 or 2000 when I first put my first web page up there. It was difficult, and I don't know, 180 paged website. I had all these great ideas about selling books on there about patent law, and trying to draw people in, and have hundreds of pages of frequently asked questions, and then putting a blog post up every day. And I think just, good content and hard work wins the day all over the shortcuts. I don't care what it is. And nobody ever knows what those algorithms are for Google. They're saying, they used to say if you would do stuff, that they would blacklist you if you put your patent down there 75 times in your meta tags or whatever. But nobody knew exactly what the algorithm is. I don't think they know what it is now. And like I said, I think the bottom line is, if you have a good product and you're honest about it, and you're selling something, things will work out for you.
Yeah, I've worked for companies and been in that situation too, where you're trying to beat the algorithm, where you're trying to, oh, you got to post this many times, and you got to do this, and you got to post this time of
Yeah,
day, and you've got
yeah,
to,
and you have to have this many words, and you have
right?
to have this and that, and I don't know if any of that was true, but I did all that. I did all that, and I
Sure.
had a whole list, and even on, if I don't know if you have WordPress, I used WordPress for my blog. It would grade you, and you would get red lights and green lights, and then you'd have to turn those red lights into green lights and figure out what the issues were. And I don't know how much it worked. And right now I'm trying to put up this type of content on my podcasts, and hopefully that, people will find it interesting, and I'll be able to help people, and more people will watch it, and then in turn they'll come to me as their patent or trademark attorney. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think hard work and elbow grease wins the day every time.
Yeah, we've kind of gotten away from that. I think for a while it was quantity over quality, and now I feel like we've pivoted back to quality over quantity, and I'm really glad that that's the case, because you're right. Like, putting up just put up the good content, keep the momentum going, and your mark will gain momentum.
Absolutely. And even, they talk about this AI stuff, and I was asking my IT guy, can we use this to write blog posts? And they said, if you're an expert in a field and you're posting these things, Google will look at it differently than just somebody that's not an expert in the field. And that, some of these AI generators work. And I haven't tried to do it yet, but I've used AI. I don't know about you. On my emails now, you have this autopilot or whatever they call it on Copilot, and it's sometimes, it's easy. You just throw a couple words in there, and then it makes a decent sentence out of it, and you don't have to worry about punctuation or anything. And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong, and I got to go in there and edit it. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for what I send out there, so I'll make sure that You know, I go through it and I edit it and make sure that it's correct. But it certainly is a tool that's helping me save time. Where it might have taken me, especially me with just one hand, I can't type very fast. If I could just type in some, you know, general outline, and it can put it in sentences and punctuation, and even just hitting the, you know, the shift capital, you know, with one hand, it's a pain in the neck. And if it
Absolutely.
can save me, you know, 10 minutes and I can do it in 1 minute, why not do it?
It's a tool, right? It's a tool to help us. It's not something to fall back on. And I think it's very
Exactly. The
interesting.
end product is still my product,
Right,
whether it's a tool that did it, or because I'm sending it out and I'm signing
right.
my name into the
Got your name
bottom
on
of it.
it. So do you kind of sort of, you always take like more of a holistic approach with your clients instead of just focusing on the one thing, the trademark, and you kind of look at it as a whole, like, hey, let's focus on your brand overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and that's why I say I bill at a flat fee. I say, look, it's don't worry about picking up the phone and calling me. I give you my cell phone number. I give you a link right to my calendar. And I say, if you got a question, call me, text me, send it to me. If I can't pick up because I'm on the phone with you right now, I'm not going to hang up on if somebody else is calling. You know,
I
I
appreciate
say
that.
it's all the legal advice that I'm giving you. And my job is to make sure that this thing goes through. And I want to, it's always harder to fix it afterwards. Like when a
Yeah.
client comes to me and says, I tried to file it myself and I need to fix it. A lot of times it can't be fixed. It has to be started over from scratch. And they might have lost their intellectual property in the meantime. So yeah, I'm not just filling out a form. I'm working with real people, trying to solve problems, give them legal advice, and make sure that you know, it works the first time. And you know, nobody's infallible. And but I gotta say, my record, you know, is pretty damn good.
If some before someone comes to you, what should they have put together, like to keep their ducks in a row to kind of help the first meeting with you? What would you like them to walk in your office with?
You know, I always say have a timeline and know exactly
Okay.
when, where, and why, you know, what you did, so that we can protect it the best we can. And you know, I have questionnaires that help that. And you know, somebody just called me, a corporate client, you know, and said, you know, you sent us these things. Why don't, you know, what exactly are you looking for? I said, you know, just fill it out. And you know, I won't bill you before you pay me anything. Fill out the questionnaire and send up another meeting, and then I can give you a well-reasoned opinion on what to do and where to go forward. And then you can decide whether or not you want to hire us or not.
Yeah, well, it's definitely important. I think we've established that to speak with someone who knows what they're doing. Well, thanks for joining us on Guardians of Innovation, Patent and Trademark Law with registered patent attorney Vincent LoTempio. To connect with Vincent, visit lotempio.law.com, and please like and subscribe and review our videos. We love having you here,
Yeah, there's
Vincent. Always
well, I'm sorry to cut you off. There's
go ahead.
I'm just starting a few commercials, and they've come up with a slogan for me, and I don't know if you want to throw it out there, but it's get to know LoTempio. And
I like it.
that's what my commercials have been saying on it.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, Vincent, thanks so much for being here, and for all you out there, get to know LoTempio.
All right, Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate you as always.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.